So welcome to our session today. We are on our fourth session of the Oneness training. And as we start, I would like to start with a review as well. But remember, today we are doing session 4, which is Embrace the Interaction for Emotional Oneness. You already got the notes as a PDF. And as we begin, let me just give you the big perspective of what we are doing and where we are in the process, okay? So remember that when we started talking about oneness as a model for marriage and understanding marriage, we divided into 4 categories: spiritual oneness that deal with structure, emotional oneness that deals with interaction, physical oneness that deals with sexuality, and legal oneness that deals with divorce. So we are going through the whole program in that order. And in the previous 3 sessions, we focus on spiritual oneness, the section of structure, and we ask important questions. The 3 questions we ask were: which model are you using? The partnership model, the 50-50, or the oneness model? We also ask, which structure are you using? The macho structure, the feminine structure, or the oneness structure? And we also ask the question, which compass are you using? The happiness compass, the success compass, or the service compass? So these were the 3 previous sessions that we did. Today, we have now completed the first category of spiritual oneness. We're going to now focus on emotional oneness, and we're going to spend the next few weeks in this category. The notes that you have on the PDF are the full session, but we're going to use the same notes for 3 consecutive weeks, because rather than doing the full session in one meeting, we are going to do it in 3 different meetings. So you will not be needing another PDF file for the upcoming weeks. You will just use the same one you have right now. Okay? So with that in mind, what we're going to do is that we're going to start now session 4, Embrace the Interaction for Emotional Oneness. And we are going to ask a key question: do you make your spouse feel accepted? If you're not married yet, but you are in the process of getting married, then you would ask, do you make your fiancé feel accepted? And by the way, as you do the homework, if the notes use the word spouse because it's thinking about marriage itself, but if you are engaged and in the process of getting married, just change that word for fiancé once you do the homework, and it will apply, right? So don't think it doesn't apply just because it doesn't use the right word. But this is the question we're going to be focusing on today. Do you make your spouse feel accepted? And what we're going to learn is that the path to emotional oneness is paved by acceptance. Before we enter into the details of the whole lesson, I want to get to 3 different case scenarios of marriages that are struggling with different things. And let's see, who wants to go first? You go like this. Otherwise, I will go like this. Okay. Okay, so Brandon, you go first. Who wants to go second? Okay, so Trey goes second, and then Kelly, you go third. So here we go. Case 1. Sam is frustrated with his wife because she does not know how to squeeze the toothpaste correctly. What should he do? He's just annoyed by it. Should he teach her to do it right until she gets it? Should he make fun of her at family gatherings so she will feel pressure to get it? Should he accept that they have different ways of squeezing the toothpaste and get over it? Or none of the above?
Okay, well, I know that the answer is probably D, but I would just like to
the answer
say
is probably which one you said?
D is probably D, none of the above. However, I have experienced A and B in the past. So I kind of want to say that C is the right way to do it.
Okay.
But I know you like to trick us with these none of the aboves, so
Okay.
can I go 50-50, or can Hannah be my tiebreaker?
Okay, so in this case, I agree with your answer, right? That's the one I would pick too. So I I'm not looking for the right, wrong answer, as it is more like, what is the answer that you think should be the case? Why do you think that C is the case?
Well, for me, I have a very specific thing in mind that happened in the past, and it's bringing back lots of memories. And I don't know, there's not really any right or wrong way to squeeze toothpaste. It's just like, I don't know, how we've grown up doing things and how we do things, and we don't want to like try to mold people into things that they aren't. So that I don't know if that's an answer, but
yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. And again, as I'm asking you these questions, I'm just simply trying to understand what you're thinking, rather than do you have the right or wrong answer, right? It's like what you're thinking. Yeah, you are saying that there are certain things like squeezing the toothpaste that it's not really right or wrong. It's just how you grew up doing it. You're used to it, and how would you impose your way on the other person? So just learning to accept that they have different ways of doing it is the best way to go in your case. And if you have not been married, maybe you look at this case and you say, really? Yeah, and things like this can create conflict in some relationships. And in fact, some couples decide to, you know what, we're going to have a bathroom that has, the two sinks. And I have my own toothpaste. You have your own toothpaste, and in that way, you can squeeze it however you want. But I'll squeeze mine the way I want. So they come up with their own solutions. Let's go to case 2. So this was Trey, right? Trey and Eli. Okay, Martha is frustrated with her husband because he does not like to plan ahead. She does not understand why he's not a planner like she is. What should she do? A, nag him until he learns to plan in advance. B, complain to her mom and coworkers about him. C, accept the fact that she is a planner and he is spontaneous, or none of the above.
Your answer.
Yeah, I would say this would be C as well, except that she's the planner and he's spontaneous.
Okay. So how come not just teach him to plan in advance until he gets it?
I feel like this is more of a character trait, and I feel like it's something you can definitely talk about. And so it actually makes me think of, like, not even in just this scenario, but the first scenario with the toothpaste. It made me think to this time we cooked dinner at my apartment, and Eli washed the dishes, and she moved my dish rack forward and put put the bacon sheets behind it and leaned them against the counter. And then I was like, okay, I've never done that. And so, like, after I put the dishes up, I moved the dish rack back. And then, like, a few weeks later, she did it again and moved my dish rack forward again. And then I was like, hey, why do you do that? Like, not criticizing, but I'm genuinely interested. Why do you do that? And she said, well, because if you move the dish rack forward, you can put the bacon sheets behind it and lean them on the counter, and it gives you more space to draw off those like long sheet type objects. And I was like, huh, okay, I never thought about it that way. And then I started doing it ever since. So I feel like this scenario is one of the things where if like you're the planner in the relationship and the other person isn't, like maybe you can talk about it, because me and Eli have actually had things kind of like that come up where, I grew up in Louisiana where you could tell me, hey, I'm coming over your house today. I'm coming over this evening. And you don't have to tell me anything else. Like, I know you're coming over this evening. I planned for that. And when you show up, you show up. Whereas Eli is much more of like, when are you going to get there? Are you going to be here at 4? Okay. Is at 4 or between 4 and 4:30? I need to know like an ETA. And so we've had like talks like that before where like she could tell me she's coming over after work. Doesn't have to tell me anything else. Like, I'm good with it. I know she's coming over at some point and she'll be here. Whereas if I'm coming over to her house, she wants to know like, okay, well, what time are you going to get here? What time can I expect you? And it's one of those things where I think we've gotten into a rub or two about it, but now it's one of the things we've kind of accepted. that like I'm much more laid back when it comes to like ETAs and stuff like that. And I'm also not used to providing that kind of information to someone. Like I'm not used to having to tell someone, hey, I'm going to be here at X time, or hey, this popped up, it's going to be like a few minutes later. I'm not doing that. I'm not used to doing that except for like in a working environment.
Right.
And so that's one thing she brought up and we talked about. And so I feel like this is a similar thing where you can talk about it, but ultimately I feel like it's one of those things you can kind of respect and accept in your relationship.
Okay.
Because like even this is kind of where we are, because like there's some things I'm good at planning and Eli's not very good at planning those things, and vice versa. Like planning events and when we're going to hang out with people and what we're going to do, that's her. And she knows that and I know that. But like planning a certain goal, whether it be like finance or how we're going to budget for something or how we're going to map something out or strategically do something, that's me all day long. And she knows that and I know that. Right. And so we've kind of accepted both of those roles in different circumstances.
Right. So then you start complementing each other,
exactly.
Accepting you're good at this, I'm not, but I'm good at this, and you're not. So you start learning what are your areas where you do what you do and accept the other person's difference. You mentioned something at the beginning of your answer. You said that this is kind of like a character trait or like you're wired. We say things like this, you're wired this way. But then later in your explanation, you also talked about cultural differences, whether it be growing in the same country, in different parts of the country, you do things differently. If you come together from different cultures and countries altogether, you also bring different cultural differences. So sometimes you grow up in an environment where the culture has taught you to function a certain way, and you are now like culturally wired in a certain way, right? So
very true.
So you are saying this case is different from the previous one. The previous one is more like your preference. This is how you like to do things, but this is more like this is how you're wired to do things. So I think I agree with you. That's a very good explanation of why C would be the best option in this case. Now let's go to case 3. So this will be Kelly and Jack. Patty caught her husband watching porn in his computer. Even though it was hurtful, she's not sure what to do about it. What should she do? A, get used to it because that's what men do. B, confront it because that is detrimental for the marriage. C, embrace it, just learn to enjoy it together. Or D, none of the above.
It'll be B.
You think it's B?
Yeah.
Okay. Why would you say B?
I don't think this is something that can be ignored or push it down the rug, right? Is that right?
Yeah, under the rug.
Hide it on the rug. So it has to be talk about, like, if there's porn in a marriage, it's same as cheating.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, so it has to be addressed even maybe individually with pastor or something. Yeah, it just needs to be discussed. Confronted, meaning it's not like, maybe not right at that time, but I think this is the issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, you need to address it rather than ignore it. So would you say that this case is different from the other two? This is not like a preferential thing or
Right.
you wire this way. You think this is more like right or wrong kind of category?
Yeah, at least from the premarital training from marriage, watching porns is the same as cheating.
Right.
So
right.
it's not acceptable.
Right. And I agree with your answer as well. I think this is an issue that has to be confronted because it is detrimental for marriage. And some couples would either do A or C as well. And that is not good for the marriage. They try to adapt to it. And some people say, well, all men do it, you get used to it. But that's bad advice because, like you were saying, you don't get used to cheating and accept it, that's the way it is. But as you see in all these three different cases, couples are facing different issues and they are wondering, should they accept it as it is, or should they fight against it? Should they confront it? Should they change it? What should they do? And this is what we're going to be talking about today. When we talk about acceptance, acceptance is basically this: when expectations match reality. This is what we mean by acceptance. And in order to understand this concept, I want to show you this. If you look at this graphic, you have expectations and reality matching, right? So what you expect for your marriage is what you are experiencing. The expectations that you have for your wife or your husband are the things that you are seeing happen. So that is the ideal. That is the place where acceptance has fully happened, where your expectations and your reality match. However, the problem is that that is not how you enter marriage. In fact, if I have the graphic differently to capture how marriage works, it's more like this. So your expectations do not match the reality of your marriage. Sooner or later, you will realize that you marry someone who does not fulfill all the expectations that you had. The person may fulfill some of them, some very important ones, but you will discover throughout your marriage that there are certain expectations that are not being met. And some may be as simple as the way you squeeze the toothpaste is not what I expected. But others may be more serious, like, hey, I didn't expect that you were going to be watching porn or struggling with that. The level of issues that do not match can vary in the level of seriousness, but the dynamic remains the same. And that is that you have expectations that are not being met by the reality in which you live. And this gap between your expectations and reality creates this frustration in the relationship. The bigger the gap, the bigger the frustrations. The smaller the gap, the smaller the frustrations. Therefore, when we talk about learning to accept each other, we are talking about learning how to deal with the gap between your expectations and your reality. And there are two ways of approaching this gap. One way will lead you to emotional distance. The other one will lead you to emotional oneness. And we're going to take a look at both approaches. So let's take a look at the first approach, which is the most common that couples will do. And by the way, as a footnote to this section, this is not just true of marriage. This is true of any relationship, whether it be coworkers in your job or whether it be relatives or friends. This is the same dynamic. So what you will learn in this session will help in other relationships as well. Let's take a look at the first approach. The first approach, you have the guy blue, the woman red, and they got married, but they have not learned to function purple yet. So they are still coming to the marriage with their single identity, and they're thinking, we're going to make this work. And they realize that the expectations do not match the reality. Therefore, they have a strategy in place. And they believe that the way to close this gap is trying to change the reality to match the expectations. And they're going to work very hard on making sure that that reality changes until their expectations are met. And how does this happen? It happens in a cycle. It happens in a downward spiral, and starts at a very naive, innocent stage, which is this idea: I'll change you. Love can change anything. So when you are dating and you get engaged, and during that early stage of your relationship, you realize certain things about each other. And that's where the planner realizes, oh, I guess he is not a planner. But that's okay. I'll help him learn how to plan. And that's what the person is thinking. I'm going to help you change so that you can become a better person. And this is kind of like the mindset that this person is entering the relationship with. However, the person doesn't anticipate that that reality is going to be harder to change. And because the person is trying and it's not working, it enters into a new stage of that deteriorating process. This is where the person starts getting annoyed, and starts getting so annoyed that every interaction that they have starts becoming tainted by this annoyance. The person starts going, or, rolls the eyes like, again, and starts making these little comments. It's like, okay, I guess I'll have to plan this time, and slowly the person is communicating to the other, I'm annoyed. I don't like this aspect of who you are. And the Bible talks about this in Proverbs 27, verses 15 through 16 says, a quarrelsome wife is as annoying as a constant dripping on a rainy day. Stopping her complaints is like trying to stop the wind or trying to hold something with greasy hands. And even though it uses the word wife here specifically, the concept is applied to any spouse. You could say a quarrelsome spouse is as annoying as a constant dripping on a rainy day. Perhaps you have not had the problem of having a roof that is dripping, but you've had a faucet that is dripping. And it goes, and it's not stopping. And you try to close that thing, only to realize, oh, this is defective. You cannot turn it off. Keeps going. And that non-stopping, always there, is the nagging attitude that the person develops at this stage. Because the person is annoyed. I cannot stand you. I thought I could change you. I realized I can't. This is too hard. I can't stand you. But from there, it moves to a next level, which is I'll complain about you. This is where you start noticing that couples are in this kind of time of crisis in the relationship. Because whenever you get together during Thanksgiving or for a social gathering and you start talking, the comments start coming out, making fun of the spouse, putting the spouse down, ridiculing the spouse. And now you have a coworker that you're having lunch together and starts complaining about her husband or his wife. And now this person is not only annoyed and lets you know that the person is annoyed, but starts sharing the frustration with a circle of friends or relatives. And at this point, the Bible also says that something starts happening. In Proverbs 17:9, it says, he who covers an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. You notice that the outcome that Proverbs says, what happens if you keep the issue within the relationship and you learn to work with it? You're promoting love. But what happens when you start just complaining with everybody else? And everybody else knows what's going on with your marriage. What is the outcome of that? It says it separates close friends. Suddenly, the relationship with your spouse starts becoming more and more distant. Not only now I realize you're annoyed with me, but I also realize you're telling everybody about this, and now I do not feel respected. So that distance starts growing. From there, it moves to the last stage when the person just cannot take it anymore and says, you know what? I'm done with you. I want to find a better one. And this is when the person decides to get divorced and goes and finds another relationship. But what the person doesn't understand is that he or she is doomed to fail in any relationship, because the problem is not that they married someone that did not meet their expectations. The problem was that they did not know how to deal with the gap. And therefore, because they will always marry someone who is not fully fulfilling all the expectations, they're going to fall in the same cycle again and again and again. Needless to say, this couple then is only experiencing emotional distance and is trapped in a deteriorating interaction where they are not making the other spouse feel accepted. This way of dealing with the gap is not the way that leads to oneness. However, this is the most common way in which people will deal with this gap. And that's why you need to understand this now, that this will be your tendency, but you should work with everything you've got not to pursue that approach. Instead, rather than working with that approach, you have to understand, first of all, that the gap is going to exist. You see, it's almost like having a balloon with helium. It will want to go up, right? And you pull it down, but you let go and it will want to go up. To come down, it requires that effort, that intentional effort that you have to hold it. If you let go, it will go up. The same thing happens with this gap. In your relationship, the gap between your expectations and your reality, it's always going to, by default, want to come apart, separated from each other. And your role is to make sure that, no, you're going to bring it together, and that demands intentional effort. So how does this work? If the first approach leads to emotional distance and it's not the right way to do it, then how do we deal with the gap? Well, a couple that is experiencing oneness, a couple that is mature and is working towards this closeness, will do it completely different. And this is how it works. There's a clear distinction between two categories. One of those categories are things that need to be accepted. And there's other categories that need to be confronted or addressed. And those two categories are clearly separated in the person's mind. What are the ones that need to be accepted? These are the areas in which, rather than changing reality, I have to change my expectations. This is where I'm going to lower the expectations to match the reality I have. And those are the categories that are related to primarily personality and preferences. This is what we were talking about earlier. This is how you are wired, or this is how you were you grew up in your culture. These are things that that's how you see the world. That's how you process information. That's how you're wired. Okay, and we talk about personality as a general category for these kind of things, but also there are preferences, like the squeezing of the toothpaste, the way you fold the towels, the way that you place the toilet paper, all of these things, the way you do the dishes, the way you put the dishes in the dishwasher, all of these things have to do with preferences. The problem is that many couples put personality and preferences issues as if they are law. This is the right way to fold the towels, and the way you fold them is wrong. Therefore, you have to change the way you fold them. See, that mindset is mistaken because it's saying this is right and wrong. And in reality, it's not right and wrong. This is just about being wired a certain way or having certain preferences. And when you accept that reality, then you have a much more easy time lowering your expectations. The problem is that you don't lower your expectations while you think these things are law, right and wrong. And that is where the person has to shift the way they think about these things. So one way of thinking about this area is like, for instance, if you were to say, well, this is how towels are folded. You would ask this question, says who, right? Who says so? Well, I do, and my word is law, okay? Well, so now you know that you're dealing with this kind of category. This is not the right and wrong category. If you cannot say, well, this is right and wrong, then it's most likely an issue that has to do with preferences and personality. And if that's the case, there's only one approach that is the best approach if you are looking for oneness, and that is change your expectations rather than changing your spouse. And when it comes to preferences, there are lots of things that can be changed. There are lots of things that can be learned. However, there's another category, and these are the things that the person says, well, I can't lower my expectations in this area. These are areas that we have to address. These are areas that actually have to change, because if they do not change, they're going to be detrimental for our relationship. And these are the areas that have to do with what we call sin and character. These are the areas that you say, well, this is right and wrong categories. And a good way of discerning whether this is right or wrong category is by asking the question, well, who says so? And if the answer, well, God says so, it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's right and wrong category. You see? So for instance, Jesus talked about adultery, and he says, look, adultery doesn't start in the bedroom. In fact, the man that looked at a woman with lust in his heart committed adultery. That's what Jesus said. So when Jesus is talking about infidelity, he is framing infidelity as something that goes beyond the act, the physical act itself. Therefore, it is true that having pornography in the relationship is not right. It is wrong, because it is a form of digital adultery. And God says that adultery is wrong. In fact, he says that he will judge the sexually immoral. So this is an area in which we cannot say, well, all men do it, or you grew up in an old generation. In this new generation, everybody does it. Guys and girls, everybody. It's just, you live in a different reality. Come on, you need to become modern now. No, we do not go that route, because this is not a preferential thing. When there are things that have to deal with the areas that God says are right and wrong, then we need to address those. Because if we fail to address them, they are going to become detrimental for the marriage. So a couple that has oneness and is succeeding at pursuing that oneness will make this distinction very clearly, and will treat personality things and preferential things as things that you have to adapt to, and you're going to lower the expectations. However, the things that have to deal with character and sinfulness, those are going to be addressed, and we are not going to get used to them. No, we're going to work together with grace to help each other grow in maturity and godliness in these areas. So as you see the distinction here, what starts happening is that as we work in these different areas, with time, this gap starts becoming reduced. So like a little exercise here. If you were to look at these different words, okay? So Are these things that you have to accept, or are these things that you have to confront? Okay? Are these things that you have to lower your expectations, or things that you have to change the reality? So let's go with the first one. So tell me either accept or confront. Okay? So being a liar, accept or confront? You're going to mute your mics now in this section.
Confront.
Yeah,
Confront. Being lazy.
Confront.
That's a hard one.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
I feel like there's nuance to that one.
Yeah, like
Okay,
lazy,
Ruben,
like
one,
never
two.
does any work, or lazy,
Okay.
like takes a good rest on the weekend. Like, what do you
Yeah,
mean?
like I want to take a Sunday
Ah.
afternoon nap. Like, wait,
Yeah.
wait.
No, this is not
Lazy
about
with
wanting to rest. Lazy is a person that is not being productive. You know, in the Bible, it talks about the importance of being productive as well as the importance of resting, because they're both very important to have an optimum life, right? So lazy is when you, rather than needing the rest, you are neglecting being productive just for the sake of doing nothing. Okay, so I'm not talking about here the person that wants to take a long nap because he's tired during the weekend. That's a little bit different, right?
Front.
So in this one, it's harder because you need context, right? Okay, so if we say this is a person that, you know, it's not working, not being responsible, this person is just procrastinating on things that really are consequential.
Confront.
Confront, right? Okay, sexual affairs,
Confront.
Confront.
pornography,
Confront.
being forgetful,
I think that's accept.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
accept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the second thing?
Toy engine.
accept or confront.
Accept.
That
Accept.
Okay, being an introvert,
accept.
Accept.
being an extrovert,
Accept.
being an analytical person,
Accept.
Accept.
Great.
okay, being spontaneous,
Accept.
Accept.
being a planner,
Yeah.
Accept.
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 being active, always wanting to, you know, do and do and do,
Accept.
Accept.
That's me.
being slow, taking forever to do the things, and
How slow? Like
How slow.
turn off.
okay, being resentful,
Confront.
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 being manipulative,
Confront.
having verbal abuse
Confront.
Confront.
or physical abuse.
Confront.
Confront. So that's easy. It's like confront
back,
on
right
both
back.
ends, and the middle side accept. There's a
Right,
pattern.
right. So if you were to pay attention to this is how you would categorize them, right? Like, okay, these are things that I have to accept in my fiance or in my spouse. These are things that I need to confront. We need to confront together because we need to grow in godliness and maturity, right? But look at them. How many of these items under the expectation couples struggle with, and they're always in conflict because they do not accept the fact that they are different. Just think about planning a vacation. One person wants to go to you know, the museums and all the parks and visit all the architectural, you know, masterpieces, and the other person says, I just want to be a weekend alone so we can take long naps, you know. And it's like, what's wrong with you? You are boring. Why are we going to spend a vacation doing nothing, you know? And they struggle. That rather than realizing, oh, we are wired differently, so they compromise. So okay, this time we do what you like, next time we do what I like, and they learn to kind of dance around these differences. You see, so on the other hand, how many couples are living a dysfunctional marriage because they have accepted things that they should have confronted. And when the wife has a husband that is a cheater, and the wife says, well, I guess I deserve it. So I'll just have to function with it. I have to learn to live this way. So there are certain things that once you categorize them, it's obvious to say, no, this is this category, this is this category. But once you are on the day-to-day relationship, sometimes it's hard to discern them because you hadn't had this framework before. But now that you do, you need to learn to categorize them so that you are not treating things that you should lower your expectations on as if you should change the reality. Because whenever you confuse these things, then you are going to grow in emotional distance. So as you look at this exercise, the more you move in that direction, the more you're going to move into emotional oneness because your expectations will match reality. And that is where you want to be. Because this is what acceptance is, when my expectations match reality. It doesn't mean I need to lower all my expectations. It doesn't mean I have to change all my reality. I categorize them. And when that is clear, boom, you start growing. It's amazing. You start growing so much more, and you feel much more close than you did before. So as a section that the Bible talks about this in Proverbs 10:12 summarizes it very well. It says, hatred stirs up dissension, but love covers all wrongs. See, once you are loving each other, you are able to adapt the things that need to be adapted and forgive the things that need to be forgiven so that your spouse can grow in godliness. And that's the difference between experiencing acceptance or not. When you truly love, you are going to walk tirelessly in that direction. So as a little exercise here, let's do true and false, okay? True or false? I have a hard time accepting some areas of my spouse's personality. That's your answer, okay? You have to figure that out. Second one, I constantly criticize my spouse for being the way he or she is. Next one, there are some things about the way my spouse functions that irritate me. Next one, I've thought that divorce can free me to find a better person out there. Next one, I clearly differentiate between my spouse's personality traits and character flaws. And final one, I have adjusted my expectations to embrace the reality of the person I married. Okay, that gave you a little bit of a glimpse of what this looks like in your relationship. So what happens is that as you enter into these categories, you are going to experience things throughout your marriage that if you understand this early, they're going to save you so many headaches. And the way these things will happen are very different, depending the makeup of your relationship. So as we move forward in this last part of the study, I want you to see the story of David and Tamla Mann, because they had a rocky beginning in their relationship, and then they talk about their experience. Okay, so let's take a look at their experience. I'm going to do something here quickly. And let's see. Let me do something here quickly. Okay. So I want to share this. Let's see if it lets me. I'm going to do it this way. We'll do this. You can see that now? Can you see them on the screen? Say yes So I can hear you? Can you see them on the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's take a look at it and see their experience.
Like the best thing.
You make me the happiest and you can make me the maddest.
Ditto.
I thought I didn't make you mad.
You don't. And the way that I feel like I've been a good husband is I make sure that I'm always trying to bring the great here, the greater out.
I want to try.
Hang.
I think it's hanging there, Pablo.
Yeah, it's stuck. Let's see if it the internet connection. Let me do something quick. Sometimes this helps. Let me reload it and see what happens.
Do we lose him completely?
Oh, he's out.
I think he's just resetting his network connection. I think that he was.
You
all
guys
frozen.
keep Eli and Trent, Kelly and Jack, you guys keep looking at each other when something comes, like some points comes up. Hey, it's very revealing, okay?
Yeah, it's when I'm making fun of him or laughing at him. Or laughing at me. Like when something's said and it's like, oh yeah, that's me.
I just keep see you guys chatting and then I'm looking at each other. I'm like,
What's coming up?
Wait, can you hear me? We lost the
Yeah.
connection for some reason. Okay, so let me give it one more try and see if it works.
You look like one of the people.
If it doesn't work, we will do I will send you just the link. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, give me one second.
He's very choppy.
Just give me one second. Stay in there.
miss.
Rachel,
Oh,
are you going to Kelly and Jack's wedding tomorrow?
Yes, I am.
We'll see you then.
I am actually going to be with her the entire time. So
Ooh,
Hey,
very
sorry.
fun.
I'm the the little girl who sprayed the
Hold my
flowers.
dress for me.
Oh, she's the flower girl, you know.
Flower, yes, she's a
I'm the
flower girl.
Who all is coming?
It will be some of Jack's friends are classmates, so it's in total about 18 people.
Oh, that's good. That's fun.
Yeah, so no pressure. It's really small wedding, and it's mostly I think there are some like couples, so it's actually like maybe half numbers family. So
That's fun.
yeah.
Okay, so I think, can you see the video now?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
perfect. So we had connection issues. I ran out of the 30 gigabytes in my hotspot. So I had to switch to my wife's phone. So now it should work fine. So let's see, here we go.
What's two things that I'm like the best at?
You make me the happiest and you can make me the maddest.
Ditto.
I thought I didn't make you mad.
You don't. The way that I feel like I've been a good husband is I make sure that I'm always trying to bring the greater out of her.
I've learned to try to outdo him doing for me.
Nobody can love my woman like I would love my woman. We're a bit dysfunctional. If you ask us,
We put the fun
in dysfunction. The way that I feel that I may not have been a good husband is the same answer to why I was a good husband. I pushed too hard sometimes.
Sometimes I wasn't a good listener.
You can't always, come on, get it, you can do it, you can.
Things that he was saying was maybe a good idea, and I'm thinking like, maybe.
Sometimes I just need to stop and say, let's just relax. It's not that deep.
I think that all of us have to go back and just look over our vows. I'm gonna love you until death do us part.
Not until you kill me, but until like natural death does us.
Yes. Where does it all begin?
God, dog. You just made me go, yeah. Okay. So imagine being a 3-year-old, seeing your mom abused, not because of something she did, something as simple as you didn't cook what I asked you to cook. And I can remember at 3 years old saying, nobody else will ever hit my mom again.
I'm the youngest of 14, and I'm the only one that had a different father. As a young girl, I really wanted a father, but for him to never attempt to come see me, to see about me, I think the problem was rejection.
A few years later, now I'm 5 or 6, there's another incident where another guy is putting his hands on her. And as a 5-year-old, I'm trying to fight a grown man. It became a cycle of always protecting. What that did was turn me into a vicious little machine. I know people see today like this comedian, funny guy, but that turned me into a machine. I couldn't turn off.
I got to be a teenager and my mom remarried, and it was a shift. It became kind of hectic because this guy, he was mean and hateful. I could just hear him fussing at her through the walls. It's like my heart would just race. And all of a sudden, here we are dumpster diving. we were going like behind grocery stores into the dumpsters to get food. Why are we living like this? It made me start becoming mean to guys.
Through my teenage years, I could see it coming. And once I flipped the switch, there was no turning it off. I literally tried to kill somebody for messing with my mom. I tried 3 times, but it didn't work. It didn't happen. But it still mentally did something to me to where every male relationship that I had, I ruined deliberately.
I always had a bite. I always had a lash out.
I didn't trust men. I didn't care.
You're not just gonna say anything to me and get away with it.
It didn't matter if you were 600 pounds or 60 pounds.
And I had seen my sisters and them take abuse, stab, and hit.
My idea of dealing with it, let's just fight.
I'm not gonna be with nobody who's gonna just take me out and take me under. I'm not going out like that.
Coming in with the baggage that you came in with, the baggage that I came in with, and put it under one roof. Eventually there's gonna be an explosion. I would wake up in the middle of the night, shaking, fighting, tormented, to the point to where my wife woke me up and she said, enough is enough. And we prayed. The Lord just spoke to me and said, there are some really good men out there that I'm going to place in your life that are going to help you get to your destiny. But you can't get there if you don't trust anybody.
Going into my marriage, it took a while for me to kind of let my guard down and for me to really learn that I could be loved, that I had someone that could protect me.
One day, I'm sitting in a room with about 150, 200 men doing a seminar, me speaking into men's lives, and I'm supposed to be talking about one thing. And the Lord just plunked the brakes on me and said, this is what I was telling you about. And I just started to weep. I told the guys, I said, I hated every guy in here. Not because of what you did to me, because of what you did to my mom. And once I stopped and just listened to what God was telling me, when I tell you that thing was broken off of me, when you feel true deliverance, it's like a weight. It's literally like a weight that's taken off of you that you just can't describe. You can't explain. And I think that day was the beginning of true healing for me. There's a lot of pride that had to be swallowed that got us here. Commitments that had to be made and then remade and then rededicated. We don't have a perfect marriage. It's a work in progress. But what we do have to give is hope. If we can make it through and God's grace can get us through, it can help anybody.
That's true.
We're like 2 toes in a sock. We
Tight.
tight.
We never would have made it if it wasn't for our foundation and our faith in God. It's like when you hit that rewind button, it's like
It always leads back to Jesus.
It leads to Jesus.
So let's just put it in order. Jesus in us, the kids and family, and everything else. Because if he's not at the top,
He's our covering.
nothing else works.
Yes. And one thing that I did for myself is I wrote down my vision that I wanted, for my marriage. And I'll call David's name out, that my eyes don't wander off for anything or anybody else, that he keep that fire and desire for him. to keep, in our relationship.
When you wrote the list down, did you write down tall, dark, and handsome?
Well, it didn't matter if he was tall, and dark wasn't on there either, but
Handsome.
yeah, I guess so. We're supposed to be serious right now, sir.
I'm serious.
Oh, okay. And he always makes me laugh. I'm Tamala Man.
And I'm David Man.
And we are second.
So, were you able to hear it okay and see it okay? Yeah? So, tell me a little bit about what you learned from their experience as they share their story. What is something that you connect based on the things that we studied today?
For me, I like what she said at the end. When she was, I know they kind of like joked about like the list at the end, but like before they were joking about the tall, dark, and handsome. She was saying like, I made a list of what I wanted my husband to be. I asked God that I would never like turn away or desire anybody else other than who my husband is. And I think that that's like a really good point of, in the like accepting and the reality of like knowing not just what you want, but being like, no, but this person is going to be that type of thing. And kind of like matching that, like once you're married, like you're not thinking like, this is what I want, so let me look this way. It's like, no, this is what I want, I'm looking here. So I like that at the end.
Yeah, and in a sense, bringing God into the picture and saying, God, help me love this person, and not wonder, looking anywhere else. Because if this is the person that you gave me, then help me learn how to love this person. And it's interesting how they said, the priorities. God was first. If it wasn't that case, they wouldn't have made it. And I find that very powerful, because it gives hope to no matter what situation in the relationships may be facing. God has the power to restore and to change, to heal. What else is something that caught your attention as you saw the video and their story?
I would say probably the fact that they both talked about how their past experiences with not only their own relationships, but with their parents, like what they saw kind of shaped how they viewed their future relationships and things that they experienced and what they felt it should be like and expectations they had and what they were and were not going to tolerate, in a sense, to put it.
Right. They already had expectations they came with. I'm not gonna let a guy put me under, their rulership. I'm going to fight it, or the guy ready to fight any man that came in front of him. The predispositions were already there, depending on their upbringing, and that is something that you need to understand about yourself. I remember that in the story. He says, people see a comedian, and a funny guy, but they don't know my story, right? And who he is today is the sum of that journey that he had since he was born. And that is true of you, that is true of me. So what we need to understand, if we're going to experience acceptance in our relationship, is that what we see you today to be is just the surface. You're much more than that, and you bring baggage with you in your relationship. And that baggage is going to become more evident as you are in marriage. And that's why you will have to learn to distinguish between the things that have to be accepted and the things that need to be addressed. So these dimensions are very real. I want you to be aware of it, because if you are entering a relationship thinking, oh, I'm marrying the best person, he's so nice, she's so nice, everything is great, you are for a surprise, because there are aspects that are still not refined, there's ungodliness that still has to be trimmed and transformed. And that's why marriage requires that sense of commitment to learn, to accept, and make you feel accepted. So what I would like to bring up as we conclude this session today is this very important part of the dynamics. First of all, in the sections that have to do with personality traits and preferences, I highly recommend that you get the book, The Road Back to You, by Ian Morgan Cron. This is a book about the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a system that analyzes personalities, divides them into 9 different groups, and it's a system that is very helpful. Even though there are many other analysis or assessments for personalities, this one is very helpful because it gives you lots of dimensions of what this looks like. And also, you can go to the website, ianmorgancron.com, and take the online assessment. There are 2 separate assessments that you can do. One gives you more details than the other, and there's a price you have to pay to do the assessment. But if you've never done any of these kinds of assessments, if you've never read the book, this is worth doing now for your relationship. Go and order the book, go and do the assessment online, invest the money, and just learn. It's like looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing, oh, this is how I'm wired. Oh, this is how I see life and function. Because it will help you understand yourself a little bit better, but it will also help you understand your spouse a little bit better. And what this is going to do, therefore, is that it's going to enable each of you to engage with each other with more understanding, and then realize what are the aspects of the relationship that this is how you are wired, and therefore I have to just learn to accept that part of you. So this is very important. I came across this material during my doctoral studies, and I really enjoyed it, and I used it in my marriage counseling sessions as well as other counseling sessions. But one of the things I learned, for instance, in my case, according to this system, I am personality number 1 in the groups that they have. And it has different labels, but one of them is the perfectionist. And the way this person sees the world and interacts with things is that this person pays attention to how can we improve things, and you find joy in improving things. So give me something to improve, and I'll have fun with it. So that's how I see the world, just the idea of improving things, paying attention to details. All of that is how I am wired. But at the same time, one of the struggles with this person is the being too hard on yourself, not giving yourself enough space to fail when you fail, and also having a hard time forgiving. It's much easier to be resentful. So these were all things that were very helpful for me to understand about the way I was wired, and in the way we interact in our marriage as well. So I highly encourage this for you. Take a picture of this slide, go to these sections here. You can order the book from Amazon. And for disclaimer, no, I'm not being paid by this guy to promote this stuff. Also, on the second category of character and development and the things that need to be addressed, what I would like to encourage you is that if you are struggling with any of these different things, and perhaps others that are not listed here, where you know that you have carried wounds from your upbringing, and there are things that you struggle with that you wish you could talk to somebody about this, I really encourage you to schedule a counseling session so that you can start healing from these wounds from your upbringing. Because if you do not heal from these wounds, they are going to filter into your marriage. And you can gain lots of territory if you invest a lot of time initially in your relationship healing these things. And this could be done by either meeting with me one-on-one as pastoral counseling, where we talk about different things and we bring the spiritual dimension also on these things. Or you can find a counselor that specializes on an area perhaps that you are struggling with. Depending on your upbringing, there are lots of issues with attachment that people suffer from. So sometimes having a counselor that specializes on attachment issues will help you. But I want to encourage you to invest in these things now, because the more wholesome you enter your relationship, the most advantage you will have in your marriage, in growing in acceptance and growing in emotional oneness. So remember, the key question today was, do you make your spouse feel accepted? And does your spouse make you feel accepted? If the answer is no, then there's lots of work that needs to be done. So with this, we will conclude this session. I'm going to stop the sharing. And for those of you that were able to watch the video that did not join us on the live session, I'm glad you were able to see the session, and excuse us for the little technology issues in the middle. But I hope that this was insightful for you as well. So here I'm stopping the recording.